Mizzou, South Carolina coming up this weekend as, this is a game traditionally Missouri has dominated for the past 5 years. They've won the last 5 games, 9-5 against South Carolina in their history. 4-2 home record for Missouri, 3-3 on the road for the Mayor's Cup. Chris, I just want to get a vibe check going on with South Carolina as Missouri comes to town.
Vibes are high, guys. Vibes are very high.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of Mizzou. That's Who, your podcast for Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Maggie Johnson. We've got a returning guest. We got a friend of the program back on here on the Mizzou That's Who podcast, Chris Marler, joining us again to preview the South Carolina game. And look, also talk a little bit Mizzou OU because pretty popular guy on OU Twitter, Chris.
Boomer!
He's lying.
No, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to be back after talking about everything with it. Like OU fans, listen, it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. Like that game was beyond bizarre. It's like the drunkest game I've seen in forever.
Yes.
But like it's funny to me because I even gave a caveat to OU fans when they came into the league, and I was like, listen, no one's going to feel sorry for you if you have injuries either. Like this is a Mizzou team, and they came in their very first year, they lost all 6 of their top 6 offensive linemen, including the starting 5. Like no one's going to feel bad for you for any sort of injuries. And they're like, we don't give a, we're like, we did this. This is like, we got Jackson Arnold. We didn't even want Dylan Gabriel. And you're like, okay. Like here's the difference between what you were facing forever. And it's not sitting here trying to be an SEC homer, but like, guys, they've given up I want to say they gave up 20 sacks in their first 4 games in the SEC. That's more than they gave up I think it was 7 of the last 8 years. Something. I should have looked up the stat just to make sure I'm good on it. But it was like something insane like that. And you're like up front, you're beat up. You have no receivers, but you have if the Auburn miracle didn't happen, they would have stopped talking about this program for weeks. We would have talked about softball season already.
To gymnastics. I actually did see somebody say something like, you better keep up this energy when it's gymnastics and softball season. And I'm like, okay, guy.
Yeah.
I like those sports too, don't get me wrong, but when you're using that to salvage or to make yourself feel better about how bad your first season in the SEC is, there's a problem.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it has been a less than ideal season for both OU and Missouri. Missouri does get the 30-23 win just before we started rolling. I was reminded of the score of 30-23, and I was kind of taken aback of it. You see that, and you're like, wow, a high-scoring football game. But for 3 quarters of that game, it was a snooze fest. It was awful football. I think I tweeted that it set offensive football back 29 years with that game. It was very painful to watch. In the final quarter, there were 34 points scored. So in the fourth quarter, 34 points scored. It looks like 19 in the first 3. So it was one of those games where an absolute snooze fest, but a game that had a lot of hype coming into it. Didn't have a whole lot of hype as it got closer, right? Because, Chris, what kind of got us in trouble here is what OU fans caught a clip of the podcast is when we were talking about the matchup preseason. And some of the sizzle did wear off, I think, as we got kind of closer to it. Both of the teams were just like, well, we are just so battered and beat up. Missouri obviously didn't have Brady Cook playing in the game. OU lost to Drew Pine. I think they should start building the Drew Pine statue now as we're speaking. But when it comes down to it, just a drunk football game all around. I just want to get your reactions to kind of that game and just how it all developed leading into it and just the ramifications afterwards, I guess.
Yeah, the sizzle was gone. I mean, this was morning after fajitas. Like it was not my favorite. I we were checking the box score at halftime, and I was like, let's check in on Oklahoma and see what's going on. And because I think what's his name's prop bet for total passing yards. Jackson Arnold was 186, and I was like, okay, that could they had been better on offense, and the bar was set very low, but they had been better on offense over the past couple weeks. And then you look at the halftime, and he was tied with their punter for most passing yards at 43. And then what was funny was like they still couldn't move the ball apparently because then I checked the box score after that, and they had to bring in the running back to throw a pass that complete a touchdown. It was like the Drew Pine. I was sitting there at halftime and I was genuinely thinking to myself, like, what happened to Drew Pine? Like, this is a guy that like won the starting quarterback job at Notre Dame, went to Arizona State. Like, he should not be this bad, and he was bad. Like, but when it mattered most, and according to Eli Drakewitz, when your playoff hopes were on the line, he got a win.
It is crazy. I think about this all the time of how he went 9-3 at Notre Dame in the season. And I'm like, how on earth did that happen? Talking about Drinkwitz's comments.
Yeah.
He's not technically wrong. Okay, I've pounded on this podcast about how get out of your mind that we're going to the playoffs. Like, we're a pretty realistic podcast here. So like I've talked about this numerous times. But I don't blame him for what he's saying, because what is he supposed to say? I mean, if he's supposed to be like, well, my team, we're done, we may as well just stop trying. I mean, that is his job, to support those guys and, give them the best case scenario as opposed to the worst case scenario. So I don't blame him. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But, push them and see if it, can at least get them into the best bowl possible outside of that playoff. I don't know.
Yeah.
They need a lot of help if it was to happen, I do think. And
Georgia losing Ole Miss didn't help.
Yeah. There's a real logjam in the SEC standings too, and I wonder too. They've had this conversation on the Cover 3 podcast I've listened to recently, where they talk about should qualifiers for conference championship games be punished if they do lose that game, right? Should conference runners-up be punished? Yeah, I tried to make it French, but I just couldn't talk.
Qualifier.
I don't. If it's like a Missouri with a 3-loss Missouri that ends up making the SEC championship, right? Because there's like a logjam for, really just the SEC conference in general. Who will make the two teams to make the conference championship? I think it's so up in the air right now, just because Texas A&M plays Texas later on in the season. Like, there's so many different, like Tennessee. They play Georgia this week, right? Is that this week?
Yeah.
So like, there's a lot of different things that can happen with all of this, with all the standings here. And if Missouri does find themselves in the championship game and they lose, but that is like their third loss, does that punish them? I think there's a ton of hypotheticals we can talk about. As
Marler's dying. You can't see it if you're listening on Spotify.
Right. I was trying to play through contact there, Marler. I was trying to fight through the contact there. But there's some hypotheticals that can go down to it, is what I was saying. Yeah.
Well, I think God just smited me for the qualifier joke I made. That was stroking on my water there. The logjam I think was going to happen. I think we all kind of knew that was going to happen going into the season. It's like, it's one of the few things I feel like that's probably happened this year that we've been confident in and that have like happened. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're 10-2, and like I kept saying this, SEC fans, and this is going to shock you, even though you guys are a part of the SEC. In my mind, okay, but we have some people that are like that talk about the SEC and they're like, oh my God, we're going to get 5 or 6 teams in every year, and you're like, no, you're not. Like, there's other conferences that are good, and there's also other conferences that are like good brands of football. Like, you look at Oregon, like what's crazy is 4 of the top 5 teams that are going to make the playoff as of today are from the Big Ten. Like, and Indiana is second, which is just mind blowing. Still, but I mean, like, I think that the SEC, that whole logjam, like, there's not going to be a 9-3 team getting in. Heather Dinch is like, I wouldn't pause at it. And there's still 3 weeks left of the regular season and conference championship weekend. So there's like plenty of time for craziness that could happen. Listen, the funniest thing that can happen out of any of this, the SEC, like the absolute funniest thing that I would love to watch Danny Cannell, every other SEC hater in the world, and everyone else outside of Tuscaloosa lose their minds. Get a 9-3 Alabama team making this playoff. It would be hysterical.
Yeah.
If you want to see a 16-team playoff, then do that because they're going to do it until they can like figure out a way to try to make that even. I don't see it happening. Not saying that it can't happen, but it would be very hard for them, I think, to put a 9-3 team of any caliber in, because then they're gonna look at the losses, right? Because I think if you go 9-3, 10-2, and your losses are super quality, because that's what happened to Mizzou last year, right? Like obviously the playoff didn't start until this year, but if the playoff would have started last year, we had 2 losses at that time, but they were good losses. They were close losses. Like they were competitive games.
Yeah.
That's a reason that I obviously don't think Mizzou is even going to be competing for it, because the losses haven't been close. Drew Pine and Brady Cook started in both of them, so there's really not a Drew Pine excuse there.
Right.
But like, there's no way they can't look at like the Ole Miss loss to Kentucky and say that that doesn't matter whenever thinking about things. They can't look at the Alabama loss to Vandy and say that that doesn't matter. If it's going to matter for some teams, it has to matter for all teams. And that's takes me back.
The Vandy loss?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a bad loss?
I mean,
I'm dead serious. Is that a bad loss?
Is it a good loss?
It's a good win.
No, it's not a good loss. But they beat Georgia and LSU, and then they also, like, the other loss is who? Is Tennessee. They beat a Mizzou team that was ranked like a drum. No offense. They beat. Listen,
that's a bad loss for Mizzou, no doubt.
Yeah.
But we were playing with Drew Pine, who was playing under center for Alabama. It was Jalen Milroe. So it's kind of like, right. I get it, because we also struggled with Vandy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Mizzou's better than Alabama. And yeah, I'm not saying Mizzou's better than Alabama. Don't get me wrong. But it's still, I mean, it's not a great loss by any means.
No, I agree with you. I genuinely wonder what it's going to look like, because here's the thing. It could be something that's flipped around in Alabama. By the way, the sun is not going to go away, and I'm going to look like I'm a cherub in heaven for like the next 30 minutes probably. The whole thing with Bama that would be really funny as well is if it gets flipped on its head, which is like the logo, you know, like Bama doesn't have a logo on their helmet, obviously, but like the logo on the helmet, like talk is like, is basically like they've gotten the benefit of the doubt so many times. They passed the eye test. You know, we know this team can turn it on when they need to. They've played this well at other times of the season. Like they've gotten the benefit of the doubt so many times because of the eye test. You look at other programs like Penn State, which is obviously doing the same thing. Like the ceiling and the floor has been at 10 wins for them forever. But like Vandy is a good football team this year. Like I'm not saying that because they beat Alabama. I'm saying that because like, dude, they lined up and beat Alabama. Like they were the better team and they had a better plan. And Dio Pavia's been like, it was Auburn and like you know, I think they've been an underdog 7 times this year. They're like 5-2 against the spread or something crazy. Like or like it's like 6-1 or so. It's a like they've been phenomenal all season long, even though Vegas has continued to doubt them. But like I wonder if since that, you know, their logo on the helmet is Vanderbilt, if the rest of the country, when it gets down to that going over the resumes, they're like, yeah, they lost to Vandy. And it's like you could make the case this year and this year alone, be like, I'm not saying it's a good loss at all. Like all losses are bad, but it's like you could see like that's not a worse loss than Kentucky and Ole Miss, right? Like if you're comparing apples to oranges, like that's like, or is that not apples? I don't know. I'll stop talking.
It's like Tennessee and Arkansas as well.
Yeah. That's one. I agree with you to an extent, because like we were all defending Vanderbilt's play whenever they played Mizzou. I was like, Diego Pavia, like good, like he's a good player.
Great.
But at the same time, it's like Mizzou got punished a lot for beating Vandy.
Yeah,
Mizzou got punished a lot for beating Vandy. So why is there then like some kind of, then they beat Alabama, so there's like, it's like a different type of thing. It's almost like you know
all that is.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the logo on the helmet. So I don't know. It's so complicated that it's like college football is an art, but it's like confused. It's like a Monet.
Just try to. I just feel like a lot of people in college football, especially on the selection committee, they just try to big brain stuff too much, right? Like they're trying to big brain everything.
Right.
When it comes to like the selection committee, there's like, well, if they did this here, then we can do this. So this team lost to this team, but then they beat this team, so then that makes this team better. It's just what happened to just taking head-to-heads, like I think it gets dangerous, right? Especially when you start to look at the college football playoff poll, which will be announced. The second one will be announced tonight as we are recording this. It's going to be the late one too, because it's in between the two of the college basketball games and the championship classic. And it's like you start to look at some of the Georgia and Miami that are 3-4 that both lost like this week. You then start to do head-to-heads with like Texas and like Penn State, like Indiana. Where's Indiana fall in all this too? They're kind of throwing a wrench in a lot of the
There
plays.
is.
I think so too.
They're minus 500 right now to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
And
there
it's
is.
like, I get that, but what happens if they go to Ohio State and get beat the same way like Missouri got beat at Alabama? Does that matter? Do you consider that when you think about the conference championship? Because
Will they have to play them twice though in the conference? Like if they go to the conference championship, will they have to play Ohio State twice?
They'd probably play Oregon, but it just depends on everything because it depends on Ohio State lost to Oregon. If Ohio State beats Indiana, then I'm guessing that Ohio State would be in that game.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like Indiana, they haven't played anybody. Like,
right.
Strength of schedule for Indiana was 103 last weekend going into this. Like, and listen, people forget this, and I don't because I was all over it on Twitter last year. But Michigan was like 109 or 111 or something like that going into the Penn State game last year. It's like, guys, like you're not playing. Like, I don't give a shit. Are we allowed to cuss? I'm cussing. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, don't give a shit about anything about like the cupcake weeks and like, oh, you're playing Mercer this week or whatever. Like I would trade Mercer for a 9-game conference schedule of road games at Purdue. Like, shut up. Like, they've been doing that forever.
And that is Purdue is who Indiana plays after their game against Ohio State. I'm just going to put that out there. So
they suck.
And they're terrible.
They're bad.
But here's the thing with the conference championships that we kind of talked about. And we were like, should teams be punished for losing it or not losing it? Which in the past, you have been punished. Like, 100% have been. But then, like, say it's Clemson and Miami in the ACC championship, and Clemson beats Miami. You're telling me that Miami shouldn't be punished for that? I don't necessarily agree with that.
I think it's definitely case by case, right? Like when it comes down to it, I do think that if there's a 2-loss team that's in like the Big Ten or the SEC title game and they do lose and that's their third loss, I think that's a hard conversation to have about not punishing them. Miami's a weird team because they finally got right, and like they should have been. It feels like they should have got so long ago, and they finally did get got there. Let's see how many times I can say it. They fell 8 spots in the AP poll. So I don't know how indicative that will be of the college football playoff poll, right? And how the selection committee will place that. But I mean, the Indiana one is really interesting. I also think the other interesting conversation we can have too when it comes to the college football playoff, which I don't necessarily think that we all three of us anticipated having this conversation when this podcast started. But like, what do you do with the group of 5 team, right? If it's an undefeated Army, or Army loses a close game to Notre Dame, just like Boise State lost a close game to Oregon. What do you do there? And then like, how does the Army Navy game affect that too? Like, if they go and they lose to Navy, is that gonna impact them there? Like, it's a.
I'm glad you asked that, Tucker. I think with the results of last week's election, if Army would have gone undefeated under the previous administration, they're out. They're out. I don't care if I don't care if they're 100-0 or 200. And how many years this country been alive, y'all? 248 years and 0. But if now that who won, I think they're in. I think they're a 1 seed, brother.
Rice and Bailey,
USA,
can't count them out. No, I do think the group of 5 conversation is obviously a one that we don't need to have on this Missouri centric podcast, right? Maybe that's for another podcast to have, but I think that there's a lot of different variables and still like Missouri has 3 games left. there's still a lot of time left in college football for this all to develop, and Missouri does need help, as we mentioned, to make the college football playoff. Some people, Chris, I don't know if you're seeing this, some people have called this, probably tongue-in-cheek, a college football playoff game eliminator between South Carolina and Mizzou when it comes down to it. We'll talk about that coming up after this break, but first we got to talk about our friends at Home Field Apparel. I'm rocking a new shirt from them. They got the Leaping Tiger. Leaping Tiger is one of my favorite logos that Missouri has. It's a good one. I think I also have this like similar in a hoodie. I just got it in the t-shirt now. You know how I feel about that hoodie. Maggie's rocking the cap. I think I got a shirt with that logo on it too. The fierce sailor tiger, not just the regular sailor tiger, the fierce one. You can go to homefieldapparel.com. Obviously use that code Mizzou24 for 15% off your first order. Take advantage of that there as the holiday season is coming up. If you got some fans that you are friends with that are not Missouri fans, I don't know why you would, but you can also buy them things at homefieldapparel.com. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we're going to talk about Mizzou, South Carolina.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Mizzou, South Carolina coming up this weekend as, look, this is a game traditionally Missouri has dominated for the past 5 years. They've won the last 5 games, 9-5 against South Carolina in their history. 4-2 home record for Missouri, 3-3 on the road for the Mayor's Cup. Chris, I just want to get a vibe check going on with South Carolina as Missouri comes to town.
Vibes are high, guys. Vibes are very high. They've won 3 in a row. Man, this has been a really fun season to cover South Carolina. Couldn't have asked for a better start. They, like for me, not for the team. The team had not the greatest start. But yeah, it's like it's so indicative of like how fragile the feelings can be, I think, of the fan base. So basically, you know, you started the season against Old Dominion, and Old Dominion you barely beat them. Like you needed some early season heroics from you know, like from the defensive line early up and forcing these 2 fumbles inside the 10-yard line, all that kind of stuff. That they're not where they are if that game doesn't happen. Then maybe Kentucky, and then like the vibes are continuously high. And like the LSU game is what, like, I think at the end of this season, there's going to be a lot of fans, not even just in Columbia, they're going to look at this season and be like, if the refs didn't completely screw South Carolina out of that game, this would be a playoff team. They should have beaten Alabama. They should have beaten LSU. They didn't beat Alabama because of like, not because the refs, but like, you know, just some things. If that game goes on for 3 more minutes, South Carolina wins that game. Like they had Alabama where they wanted them, and they just couldn't put them away.
2-point conversion was bad too.
The 2-point conversion was bad. It was a bad throw from Sellers. But you could also argue that's like Sellers is playing like, I'm not gonna say he's playing the best football of any quarterback in the SEC, but he is playing like a top 5 quarterback in the SEC as of right now. Like the big thing with him in the start of the season was like, man, the situational awareness is bad. Situations where you can't see a sack, and he, you know, either takes a sack or has a fumble, or like, you know, like some of the interceptions. Like that LSU game still would have been put away if he didn't have a couple of bad turnovers as well. Bama, he came out and he looked much different, and since then, really, you know, they've won 3 games in a row. In his last 4 games, he's got 8 touchdowns, 1 interception. Like he's set a career high passing yards. Like they're able to run the offense through him. And I think the biggest thing is like all the stuff and the doom and gloom from fans after that Ole Miss game, including myself, that was just like, man, Dowell-Logga's got to go. This offense sucks. Like this is blah, blah, blah. They have come out and they have been unfazed by any of it. And they dominated them home, which I thought they were. I didn't think they were going to win by 24, but I thought they were going to win. And it's just been a really, really good time. And the vibes are very, very high.
I think South Carolina figured out finally what they do well. And I think, you know, that's giving Sellers that option of running. Great runner. Mizzou's not, you know, unfamiliar with super mobile quarterbacks.
True.
And then they've really gotten those check downs down with Rocket Sanders. They really got him out in the flat. And they have a really good tight end game. That's really all of their offense really goes through that passing. With the Sellers keeper, the Rocket Sanders rusher or his passing, and the tight end. They don't use their wideouts a significant amount, but what they've done and I think this is credit to the offensive line getting a lot better and finding better ways to pass block and all of that. I think that's what's really changed their game in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, like the thing is, you brought it up, like they didn't have an identity for like, I felt like most of the season, and I don't mean from game to game. I mean like from like series to series, you would see stuff here like, what did like against Ole Miss? Ole Miss, they come out and Sellers is the starting quarterback, and they go for this weird fourth down, which was just looked stupid, and the fourth like it was obvious they were going for it. Ole Miss was in punt safe, and they still had their starting defensive line on the field, and you're like, don't run this, Shane. And he's like, okay, watch this. This is gonna be hilarious. And then he did, and
Beamer ball.
Game. Yeah, Beamer ball, baby. And then they ended up scoring, and they go up 7-0. And then in the next series, they bring in Robbie Ashford. And I don't know if that's something they agreed upon beforehand, because he just played attacker and he played well. But like he fumbles on a mesh play, and you're like, dude, stop. Stop overthinking stuff and doing too much right off the bat. So I think that part it seemingly has been fixed. Like even the way they came out against Alabama, if you watch that game against Alabama, they came out, they were throwing the ball like right off the bat, which we hadn't seen a ton of. And then in the second half to start the game, they put Alabama in the most uncomfortable position that I think, besides the spelling bee, most Alabamians have ever been in. It was like they came in and they said, they took the ball in the second half. They had that was pretty good. They had 16,
that was really good.
They had 16 plays. They ran 13 run plays out of the 16. And then came in, I think they kept the ball for like 9 minutes on the opening drive, and it's like they went right down Bama's throat. And I thought that was like really impressive, because you like, listen, figure out who you are, commit to it, and then go from there. And like, I think defensively, I knew this part going into the season, they were going to be a top 5 defense in the SEC. I didn't think they'd be a top 5 defense maybe nationally, but in several categories they are. You look at ESPN on whatever the FPI rankings are, but their defensive efficiency is ranked like 3rd in the country or something, or 4th in the country right now. It's crazy. So yeah, they have the identity that they're building and that they're finding is something that's like really, really impressive to watch, because you're getting to watch a team grow up in front of you. You know what I mean? Like, those are kind of the teams that you fall in love with as like a fan. Like, listen, I'll use this example, and it might come back to bite me, but like the Bama team last year was so flawed in so many ways, but you got to watch Jalen Milroe like improve week to week after that Texas game, and you got to watch them go into games like where you're the underdog for the first time in a long time, and you pull out these like wins that are huge. Then you go beat mighty Georgia. Like, South Carolina is a team that I think that for whatever reason nationally people like to pull for, and they love the Sandstorm thing. They love like Williams Rice is a lot of fun, mainly because they haven't sat in that heat at noon before, and they get to just watch it on TV and they love it. But I mean, like, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I am dramatic, so I will. Like, it seems like it seems like Shane Beamer and like what he's doing right now is really turning a corner as a program and building something sustainable. And the things that they're starting to do are also things that like not just good programs do, but like elite programs do, where you're like, you don't let people off the mat. Like, you put your foot on people's throat and you put them away, like you did against A&M, like you did against Vanderbilt. Like, listen, if he could keep talking about Vanderbilt, even though no one asked for it, I never thought I would say this, but them beating Vanderbilt the way they did, more impressively than almost anyone else has this season, is another, like, notch in their belt. It's been really, really impressive.
We bring that up, those 3 games that they did win, all 3 big wins, like comfortable wins for South Carolina as they head into this Missouri game. Missouri's defense has been playing pretty well as of late. They've stepped up big when Missouri's offense has not been playing very well. That is obviously because they have not had Brady Cook. Still up in the air as of now, as we're recording this podcast, if Brady Cook is going to play. Shocker, Eli Drinkwitz was pretty coy about the injury report on Tuesday when he did talk about players that were injured heading into this game. Marler, how do you think of this kind of this defense for Missouri takes up against this South Carolina offense? I know we talked about the identity of the offense already.
Yeah.
With how much momentum the Missouri defense has had, and basically winning that game for Missouri against Oklahoma, they bring in a decent momentum coming up against a team that has had some pretty good offensive success.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with South Carolina is that offensively, where they've gotten into trouble is turnovers, and there's a lot of situations this year, early on, especially where it's like, like they've had a lot of turnovers. Hold on, that water killed me. I don't know what the hell happened, but sorry guys, it's been a day. So I think that South Carolina, like the way that they run their offense, like they've got to figure out a way to protect the football. The defense is like, listen, here's the best stat I can give. They are South Carolina under Shane Beamer they're 22-6 when they win the turnover battle. When they lose, they're 3-15.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is actually pretty crazy. I was going to talk to you kind of about like the keys to the game, maybe for both teams, what they need to do to come out on top. For me, I'll give you mine first because that way you don't steal mine.
Yeah,
good.
I think Missouri's linebackers have to play out of their mind. They have, like I talked about earlier, they have to watch Rocket Sanders running the ball. They have to watch him in the flat. They have to cover the tight ends shooting across the middle. They have to watch Lenora Sellers. I think there's a lot that they have to pay attention to. So, luckily, Corey Flagg Jr. and Tristan Newsome have been great. They've been great linebackers. They rank first and third on the team in tackles, so they've been more than okay in my opinion. For South Carolina, I think that if they really want to beat us offensively, I think they need to do the same thing. We need to figure out a deeper passing threat type of game. Really attack our corners. That's personally what I would do. I know that they've struggled with their wide receivers and getting that explosive play type of thing like we have, but I think if South Carolina can figure that out, I think it's going to be a long three.
I'd agree with that. And so here's the thing: it's the two things that both teams do worst offensively. Like even with Brady Cook, like connecting on deep passes is just not something Mizzou did well all season. And then for whatever reason, y'all's OC was like forcing it a lot. It just seemed weird. I listen. I didn't watch a second of y'all playing Oklahoma because I was watching Alabama LSU, and I'll make no bones about that. And I'm happy with that decision after what I saw in the box score for the first three quarters. But I do think looking at like maybe Drew Pine's got some more confidence for sure, which would be great for them. And the receivers are still there. Like you still have talent wise the best receiver room in the country. Like it seems like excuse me, every time something good would happen, something bad would happen. Like Mookie Cooper gets a breakout game against Auburn and he's injured the next week. You're like, dude,
by the way, our center's out. I don't know if you saw that, but the crazy thing about Connor Tolson getting hurt, who's one of the better centers in the country, is that I noticed he came out, but I didn't really notice a difference in the play. Actually, the play was pretty good because he played the entire fourth quarter. So, no, I agree with you. We keep getting those bad breaks. I mean, obviously Nate Noel set out a couple of weeks ago. It's just been kind of a.
They're using like 4 running backs now. Missouri is when you look at like the final box score, they get like 4 running backs getting carries just because like they kind of have to. And like you mentioned, Maggie, the fourth quarter is really when it seemed like the offense like figured things out. I don't know if that's because like Oklahoma's defense wore down but like they weren't running great offense in the prior 3 quarters. I don't know why they would like wear down type of deal. But it's interesting. I do hope, I guess, that if Drew Pine is playing in this game, that he did find some success late in that game. Like, who would have thought that, a slant route to Theo Weiss and just have him run around would have been like the key to success. We're just like lobbing it up and just have Luther try to come down with one.
Let's around on another screen pass, brother. Let's get him on a jet sweep or something. But we'll tap. It'll be a tap pass, so it's a forward pass.
Yes. Okay. I do think that's gonna be really interesting with like the quarterback position. I think that Drinkwitz thinks that he holds these cards to like a competitive advantage, right? Because he knows like his quarterback, so he's not gonna show his cards very much. But in all reality, like Maggie, you and I have talked about this, it's not really different stylistically between the two quarterbacks in terms of like you're not really getting a competitive advantage by being like, okay, Brady Cook's going to be out here, or okay, it's Drew Pine. I do think that Eli wants that like, oh, Will he play? Will he won't play? I think he kind of wants that around this team kind of the whole time going into these final 3 games of the season. But this is a game where on DraftKings, I think I saw it stout at 12.5, but I think on FanDuel it opened at 13.5 in favor of South Carolina. So it's a game where Vegas is not giving Missouri a whole lot of a chance coming into this.
I was shocked about that. I mean, now listen, just being honest, and I love you guys, and I pull for Mizzou as much as I can, and I have a lot of friendship ties there.
Yeah.
But I agree with Vegas. This South Carolina team is playing very, very well. And here's the thing. I'm not trying to be a dick when I say this, but just hear me out. Can South Carolina score 14 points on Missouri?
Yeah.
Right.
Probably.
I mean,
I don't know if Missouri can score on South Carolina. It's not because of Luther Burden not being great. It's not because of Theo Weiss. It's not because like Drew Pine didn't have a great game last week. It's because they're so banged up. There's so many pieces, and they just don't do enough on offense. Where it's like listen, they got against Bama. This South Carolina defense is much better than Bama's, which is kind of crazy to think, but they're physical. They are so good up front. Like, dude, watching them play against Vanderbilt, and again, huge Vandy guy here. I'm getting paid by Big Vandy. That's what's going on.
Big Vandy,
yeah. So but Vanderbilt going into that game, you're like, okay, they run the option well, and what does Vandy do really well? And you guys probably remember this from the game they played against y'all, is they keep themselves in constant 2nd and 3rd and shorts. Like, they are just constantly 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2. Like, they are able to get first downs that way. South Carolina, they did nothing on an offense in South Carolina with that run game. And I understand it's a completely different offense, but it just goes to show you it's like this defense is built for a lot of things. I think what they're best built for is defending the pass. Like the secondary is incredible, and they get after the quarterback. I just don't think the way I saw Drew Pine get harassed against Alabama, maybe that's too much in my mind, but this is a better pass rush. It's a better secondary. It's, it's a really, really stout defense. But, also it feels like, as I'm saying all these things confidently about South Carolina, it does have this feeling of they're a 14-point favorite over a team they haven't beaten in 5 years. If you fumble a punt inside the 10, or if Mizzou returns one, anything could happen.
It's technically 6 years to the day, but I'll let you say 5.
That's so what I want.
I agree. I agree with you about the Drew Pine thing. I think it's a little bit different because I think Mizzou fully expected Brady Cook to be okay for that Alabama game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't his ankle that was the issue. It's he hurt his hand, or his wrist, or I think giving Drew Pine 2 weeks to prepare for Oklahoma changed things a little bit. And I also want to say this too. I listened to an Oklahoma podcast before we did our. It was terrible. Before we did, I'm like, what are you talking about? He was like, Missouri's defense is not very good, and I'm like, they're like currently right now today in total defense are ranked 10th in the country.
They're real.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, but you're a woman saying that. I don't know if I believe it. You know what I mean? You know what? I shouldn't listen. Maggie knows that I'm joking because I know Maggie in real life, and I shouldn't have said that. But there's gonna be someone that's like, no. It was
the people that listen to this show also know the type of stuff that I get on Twitter mostly. So
yeah. Anyway, you were listening to a podcast.
Yes, I was listening to a podcast. But I don't think people know that our defense has been statistically as good as it has. And I mean, sure, I guess maybe you can say that we haven't played as good of opponents. I don't know. We played Vandy, so
that's true. Juggernaut.
Juggernaut.
I'm looking at it right now. The 10th. What do you?
Yeah, thanks for fact checking me, Chris Marler. I appreciate it.
I just want to keep making jokes on loud.
And I understand we got whooped in that game against Bama and Texas A&M, but even in the Alabama game, I mean, it was 6-0 at the end of the first quarter. And the problem was
it was 6-0 going into halftime. They got a touchdown with like 30 seconds left.
Right, exactly. So the problem was that eventually the defense being on the game or on the field the entire game, just wasn't going to do it. I mean, obviously Drew Pine threw, I don't know, 2 or 3 interceptions as well, which, it never helps. But I do think this defense is better than what it was in that or what the score showed in that Alabama game. The offense might not be, but the defense was.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things. Chris, you brought this up too about like a team that
Andy, about Andy or voting?
No. It's about Missouri. It's the fact that Missouri has won this matchup so many times recently it's just one of those things. I'm just like, well, all signs point to South Carolina winning this game for me personally. Like when I just like look at it, but then I think, boy, Missouri's had South Carolina's number for the past few years, and like even when we've gone into some of these games against South Carolina, thinking like, man, South Carolina, all the things are pointing to South Carolina winning this game. Missouri still wins. So it's like, that's the thing that I'm just like, I feel like South Carolina should win this football game, which then gives me pause to think, well, you know what? Maybe Missouri will win this game.
Yeah. I honestly, man, it's like, I said this like a couple weeks ago on Locked On the show, and South Carolina fans have been great to me for the most part, and like overwhelmingly like nice and supportive. I think it took them a minute. Like, because when they started, they were like, why does this dude talk so fast? Why does he constantly bring up stats that I don't care about? And why is he constantly making jokes about the president? There, I was like,
why does he love Alabama so much? Why
does he love Alabama? They don't always know that part. Yeah, but no, I remember I was like, thanks, Maggie. I was like, but I was talking about like when they got out of going into the final game of the season, I was like, listen, you could win the last 5 games. And people thought I was crazy. It was like, and I had said since the start of the year, you get Ole Miss, LSU, Mizzou, and A&M at home. Because everyone in the country going into this season, I kept saying this in like July, and through my spotty internet, people were still able to hear it. Thank God. But it was like at the start of the season, it was like people would go in and be like, oh my gosh, like there's just like, they might win 4 games. The schedule's brutal. It's like the schedule is the schedule. Like the schedule at South Carolina is always tough. Like it's scheduled the schedule is difficult every single year. Like, so, if you're going to get got, you got to get before you get got before they get got. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So get it? Just getting toes. So, but I was like telling somebody, I was like, listen, they're going to win one of those games. They get all 4 at home. No one in the country thinks they're going to win those games. And all 4 of them have played pretty bad on the road. And I love Eli Drinkwitz and I love Mizzou to death. But if you look at the full sample size, not just last year, they have been bad on the road, and they have been bad in those spots. Like, so like it, like I think looking at that, I kept saying that the emotional win that Mizzou was going to have over Oklahoma, because I just thought, even with the sizzle being gone, I thought they were going to beat Oklahoma from summer on. The emotional letdown the next week, which I don't know if that's the case, because it's not like they beat the same Oklahoma team that they probably had circled on their schedule for a while. But it does feel like that this team, they were going to get somebody. They got A&M. They should be able to get Missouri. If they don't, it would be pretty damning to the momentum that's happening in the building right now and also around the program, because this is like, this is I think the most like listen, 2022 was great, and you close out the season with 2 huge wins and going into next year and all that kind of stuff. But like, there's just something about what's happening now that feels very different at South Carolina, and it just feels like they're building things like the right way, and all the baby steps that people were impatient to watch are finally coming to fruition.
Yeah,
just suck it.
I'm not sure what fans will do.
Yeah.
If they lose.
If they lose
again.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, this is South Carolina fans, as I've found via the interwebs, not big fans of Mizzou or Mizzou fans, and it comes down to this game, right? I mean, it's the same reason Mizzou doesn't like Kentucky, because we've had the exact same issues with Kentucky since we've joined the SEC. Sometimes you just have that kryptonite team that you struggle with.
Yeah, team, or you mean refs? Because I don't think I've ever seen Missouri struggle with Kentucky. I've seen them struggle with referees.
That's fair.
in that game.
I mean,
just saying.
I'm a fan of that statement, 100%. But I don't know if it's been the same in the South Carolina Mizzou games. I think it's been the games have been weird. Like a few years ago, South Carolina came back from a 2 or 3 touchdown deficit, and I think lost by 3. You had the game in the monsoon in 2018. Yeah. You had the missed field goal in 2013. These games are weird. I'd see a lot of people being like, it's going to be a blowout. I think, like you said, it kind of depends on, does the team ride high off their confidence from the game last week? And does Drew Pine have his confidence? Do Theo and Luther have some confidence now that they've made some, deep ball catches in that game? Or do they come back down to reality?
Yeah. I don't know. I do know that you got to stop fighting with people on the internet.
You got to stop fighting with people on the internet, Chris Marler. I didn't even talk. I literally only tweeted my own tweets after you saying you're like, their fan base does not like us on Twitter. I'm like, let's start from who does. Let's
fair.
Smaller list.
Yeah. Listen, I'm right there with you. I need to listen to my own advice. Anyway, Tyler, you were saying as you look up your MGK news.
I
check out. I'm just reading up on TMZ on the phone. Just like
I have to. I have to get right with the news. I don't know if I really have anything else on this game. I think we covered it pretty well.
You want to talk more about what I said about Army?
We can talk about.
Talk more about Vandy if Marler wants.
Talk about Vandy. We can talk about Army.
Send this to Vandy because they have their own show apparently on KCSN. This is my bad. Sorry if I hijacked the show, and my coughing was not great, but I'll work on those things. I'm gonna get a lozenge. Phenomenal word. It kind of sounds like what happens when your stuff's dripping in the back of your throat, like it's a lozenge. You know what I mean? I know. Think about it. Yeah,
it came from the sound. It's onomatopoeia.
There you go. That's like the word I was trying to say earlier. I'm pretty
qualificate earlier.
I don't even know. I don't even know how I said that. I was trying to throw an O in there.
Would you like the orange juice for your breakfast? I'll do a qualificate.
There we go. Well, I think that'll do it for this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who here on KC Sports Network. Appreciate Chris Marler joining us once again, friend of the program now. You're an official friend of the program as we are rocking and rolling here. As Missouri gets ready to take on South Carolina, 3:15 kickoff Central Time on the SEC Network once again.
Hold on, real quick. That sucks. That pisses me off so much because it's like, dude, they're both ranked or they're going to be ranked. Like, this is so stupid that you have like the 3:15 spot could not be a worse spot. 12:45 is not as bad. The 7 whatever o'clock game is not as bad. 3:15 p.m. Central Time going up against the 3:30 game on CBS. I don't know if people are still watching that, and also on that just sucks. Like, that is sometimes I feel like. Love you to death, Maggie. Sometimes I feel like your rants about the TV scheduling is not warranted. This one, I can't believe you have said more. It should have been like all the tweets. Like, this is such BS that this is happening to both these teams, especially when they're like, listen, Mizzou's not playing great. Fine, they're still 6-2. They're 2, so it's a ranked matchup. It's a ranked matchup, and it's on SEC Network. Like.
I feel like you're talking about the Boston College game, which was still the only ranked matchup of the week that week. So I don't know. But no, I get what you're saying. I don't care as much because it's an away game. So it's kind of like, so the same with like the Texas A&M game being at 11 a.m. I thought was crazy, but I didn't really feel bad for them that much.
Yeah. It's good. But I don't actually because they got blown out. So that's probably good.
Not as many people watched it.
Yeah.
But my struggle with the timing is that they do a lot of these things. I know you're on the payroll of this team, not the team, but you work for them, Marler. They'll do anything to make sure that LSU gets as many night games as possible, but it's insane. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
It's like a birthright to them. It is, and I tell you what, man. Like, and listen, they're not wrong about this part. They're not, but like the heat factor comment that was made at like the UCLA game, because there were so many people that were gone, and I remember texting Matt about it. And I was like, man, this looks really bad. He's like, dude, there are people on that sideline right now. It's 115 degrees in the heat. And Louisiana heat is like, I'm not trying to sound like y'all going downhill. You have no idea. Like, humidity. Like, it is a different level. It is so uncomfortable. It is so uncomfortable. And like, but you're not wrong, because it's like they got a 3:30 start, and then immediately they were like, hey, listen, due to health concerns, we should only have night games from now on, which, by the way, we love more than anything. So make sure you make it happen. They're like, okay, whatever. Like,
right. I mean, I'm going to tell you, it was not 115 degrees, but for 3 of the games that I've been at Mizzou, it's been blazing hot. Like, I mean, sweat never. I'm like, I understand that it's hot. Probably not that hot. Like, I get it. But I think there needs to be some type of thing where they figure out the timing, because like, we're only going to have one conference night game. It was that 6:45 game we just had against Oklahoma. Yeah. They've got to figure out a way, because the environment's better at every stadium at night. Every stadium. Everybody knows that LSU has that competitive advantage when they play at night. It's the number one place to play anywhere. So you've got to figure something out where it doesn't risk the health and safety of players and fans, but that keeps it a little bit more on the same level.
Yeah. It is interesting scheduling. At least they do the thing where they'll do it 2 weeks in advance instead of 5 days before, like the Big 12 does, something like that. Just like, oh yeah, by the way, this week's game is going to be, and then just kind of hit a random time.
5:20. Mountain time.
I think it's so wild they do that for the Big 12. But that's not the most wild thing about that conference.
The Mormons.
The Mormons are actually the wildest thing about that.
Have you seen this? It's really good. It is really.
Yes, I've seen it.
Did you? Okay, we should talk about this off air. Tucker, I have so many things I want to talk to you about. One, you contributed to, like, I'm not making this up, probably 3 to 4 weeks of me drinking on Fridays, strictly because I was like, I could probably dabble around. I might do something good. I mean, I'd get on Twitter and I'd see a tweet. It's like, it's 5 o'clock, guys. Let's have a drink or something. I was like, you know what, Tucker, let's have a drink. But the Hulu doc, the best part of the Hulu doc, and this has nothing to do with anything, and your audience probably hates it, but I'm going to say it anyway because I've got you held captive now. Here's the thing. The Mormon, like the whole doc was like, they're like, what do they do? It's like, from sun up to sundown, all those people did was find out not so creative ways around getting around the rules of their religion. It was just like, let's grill and have coffee. Oh, let's go to a soda shop like it's 1953 and we get some cream in our Dr. Pepper. You're like, what? Like, listen, no adult, like, if you see an adult drinking a Dr. Pepper, it's unsettling. And I love Dr. Pepper, but it's like, if you see it in the wild, it is unsettling. Like, listen, Maggie, when's the last time you saw an adult, a tax-paying 9 to 5 working adult with a Dr. Pepper in his hand, and it wasn't at a county fair in Wetumpka, Alabama?
I drink Diet Dr. Pepper.
Diet. That's not the same. I'm talking
okay.
Dr.
You mean a full-fledged calorie pepper.
I mean, fully leaded. Fully leaded.
Fully leaded.
The diesel.
It's not common.
Yeah. Listen, West Virginia has Mountain Dew. If you see someone drinking Mountain Dew, you're like, that's not good. Something's up in that person's life. They need Jesus. And then if you see someone listen, if you see someone drinking Mountain Dew over the age of 23, because otherwise they're just doing it to sit and play video games or meth or both, one of the two. But Dr. Pepper is the Mountain Dew of Alabama. You see people drinking it, you're like, oh, no. That person can't feel their ankles, and they don't even know it yet.
Well, on that note, that's gonna actually do it for the 6th edition
everyone
of Mizzou. That's it. Appreciate it, everybody. We'll talk to you guys next week after Missouri, South Carolina.